Now, as you know, the world went into some conniption when photos came out about how classified documents were being held by the former President of the United States, Donald Trump. How dare he put something in such an unsecured fashion, and particularly next to a toot. Now, I don't know which part of Mar-a-Lago this was, but fairly obviously that is not the most secure room to ever have things in. And part of the reaction to all of that was great shock and dismay, among others, from President Biden about how disgraceful Donald Trump was for the way he held on to information that he didn't have any right to have.
How that could possibly happen, how anyone could be that irresponsible. And I thought, what data was in there that may compromise sources and methods? By that I mean names of people who helped, or et cetera. And it's just totally irresponsible.
The only problem is that, as you know, Joe Biden is not amazing at keeping on to classified or secret documents either. There was a report that came out at the end of last week about where he kept documents. And among other places, look at this entirely secure facility, otherwise known as a garage, with a bunch of boxes that are clearly open and freely able. If somebody, for some reason, broke in, they wouldn't have to look that far to go and find something that talks about sources and methods, exactly the stuff that Biden was blowing up about. You would also know that the media went particularly crazy because Donald Trump was having a conversation with people who were writing a book where he was allegedly waving around documents that the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, believes to have been secret government documents. And CNN even had a tape proving that this was the reckless use of secret information.
I think we can probably, right?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to
Declassify.
figure out a yeah.
See, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't, but this is classified.
Now we have a problem.
Well, as you know from this DOJ report, we also learn that there was a conversation that Joe Biden was having with the person who was helping him write, or ghostwrite, one of his memoirs. Yet the tapes for this particular interaction, where Joe Biden would be reading off the documents, well, guess what's happened to those? They have mysteriously disappeared. In fact, apparently the suggestion here is that the documents themselves have literally been deleted. And who deleted them? None other than the person who was writing the book. So they both took documents they shouldn't have taken. They both talked about them with other people, and they both had tape recordings. Now, this is what's important to note here, that in the document itself that the DOJ put out, that the writer, quote, deleted digital audio recordings of his conversations. Now, as you saw there, and it was flashing past quickly, that the documents that Biden had were either first source documents that were classified, or they were notes that were taken off classified meetings. And Joe Biden legally would have been able to go to the National Archive and take notes himself of the notes, and then be able to take those back to write his book. But he didn't want to do that. So they took the documents with them, where, as I say, this was towards the end of his vice presidency, which is, what, 8 years ago now? Show this again, guys. As he approached the end of his vice presidency, Mr Biden sought to keep copies of his note cards and other records for use in a book writing process. According to a staffer involved in the project, Mr Biden wanted to take copies of the note cards so he didn't have to go to the National Archives. He waved them around. The ghostwriter ended up deleting them. So Donald Trump gets charged for doing all of these things. And in part it's because he had the willful retention of documents, meaning he knew what he was doing. But the investigation into Biden has decided that he will not be charged because, as you know by now, a jury wouldn't find him guilty of the crime that the prosecutor believes he is guilty of, because he's just a forgetful old man. But as for whether he knew what he was doing when he took the documents when he was vice president 8 years ago, this is what the report says. So Trump charged with willfully taking the documents, Biden not charged, but our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a public citizen. So he leaves the vice presidency 2017 in January. That's 8 years ago. These materials included marked classified documents about Afghanistan and 2 notebooks where he had handwritten entries about national security and foreign policy implications because it was about sources and methods. He did exactly what Trump did. Exactly what Trump did. But the finer points as to why Trump has been charged and Biden has not been charged is that apparently when he learnt about these documents, he did everything he could to hand them back. The only problem is that's not true. He didn't learn about the documents, he took the documents. He then shared the documents in a conversation with a person who was writing a book. And it's only after the Donald Trump documents come out that they asked Joe Biden, so have you got any hanging around? Oh, yeah, I got a couple, but that's okay. You can have them. And apparently that's the difference between being charged and not charged. So what you saw was the president popping up towards the end of last week, pretending this is a completely different story. His media mates, it's a completely separate story, nothing to see here. But of course, if the reason he is not being charged for doing exactly the same thing, which was willfully taking documents, sharing them with somebody that was writing a book, there's tapes to prove it, but they've been erased, and where he kept the documents were in open boxes. And the only reason why this isn't going to trial is not because he's a sitting president, but because he's a delightful old man who forgets a lot of stuff, including apparently he couldn't get right the year, not the day, the year that his son died. He apparently said in the interview multiple times, when did I finish being vice president? But probably what you saw a lot of in the media in the past couple of days, and rightly so, was him standing out there trying to pretend that he's still got it mentally, but very obviously doesn't.
How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, it wasn't any of their damn business. I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's totally
How bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak. As you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in.
The only problem is that's not true. You see, the document itself, freely available, Google it, Biden Documents DOJ. You'll get the full 300 and something pages if you want to read it. This is the document, this is the heading that is on it. Well, somebody who has actually read the entire document and turned around and has been able to call out that even what he said in the press conference wasn't true is my mate Megyn Kelly. She takes the examples of what was spun versus the reality of the report. Example 1.
I've seen the headlines since the report was released about my willful retention of documents. These assertions are not only misleading, they're just plain wrong.
He's misleading you. In certain parts of the report, the special counsel found Mr. Biden may not have realized folders contain national defense information. And if that's the case, that he then would not have willfully retained such info. But the special counsel makes it clear in the second paragraph of the report that, quote, our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. Done.
Example 2.
I did not share classified information. I did not share it. With your ghostwriter? With my ghostwriter, I did not. Guarantee you did not.
The report actually found, quote, Mr. Biden sometimes skipped over presumptively classified material and warned his ghostwriter that the entries might be classified. But at least 3 times, Mr. Biden read from classified entries aloud to his ghostwriter.
So despite everything you've heard, everything you can read yourself, and everything that has been proven to be wrong about what he said, his supporters go on TV and say garbage like this.
The more the president's out there fighting, looking like Uncle Joe, as folks know, that is something the American people want to see. And frankly, how folks, part of the reason they voted for him last time. Anybody remember Beat Him Like a Drum?
Uncle Joe is very swampy. That's the best the lawyers will let me say. Uncle Joe is very swampy, and there's a very big report that proves all of this.